Hi, everybody. Here we are. We're going to start up part 3 of our presentation. So let's get started. So thus far, we've talked about the difference between formal power and informal power. And we've talked about accesses to informal power that county clerks have ready connection to, but they may not necessarily always understand how to operationalize on it. Now what we're going to do is to explore some of the complexities of communicating at the city and county level in terms of government. Understanding and utilizing your inherent formal authority is essential. Building on this foundation, our next focus is going to be on the often complex political environments that city and county clerks must navigate effectively. I'm going to show a TEDx talk by Maddie Lukert, who discusses the creation, spread, and the effects of fake news on political polarization and proposes some solutions to these problems. I'll see you after the video.
Over the summer, I work at a restaurant back home in Michigan. One night last summer, I was nearing the end of my shift, so I was folding some silverware, standing near the end of the bar and having a conversation with a waitress about conspiracy theories. What could possibly go wrong? The waitress told me that she was not a conspiracy theorist, nor was she a fake news believer. But one theory she firmly believed in was that of Pizzagate. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Pizzagate theory, it was a theory spreading around the time of the 2016 election, claiming that Hillary Clinton and her administration were trafficking children underneath of a DC pizza restaurant. I'd always known fake news was a big problem, but that night it became pretty clear. Fake news can be truly terrifying. But fake news is much more than just conspiracy theories. Fake news is having very real impacts on political polarization in the US and many other countries around the world. As a journalism and communication student, I'm especially invested in researching and understanding this problem. But it doesn't just apply to me. All of us have the duty to vote and be active members in society, so it is essential that we know how and why fake news is created and spread so we can prevent it from affecting our decision making. Today, I'll go over 4 main points. First, I'll talk about the creation of fake news, then the spread of it, then I'll talk about its effects on polarization, and finally, what are some solutions to this problem? What can be done about this? But in order to start at the beginning, we have to look at the very first step in the process. How is fake news created? What I've come to understand is that there's 2 main reasons we create fake news. The first is to earn money. I'm sure many of you in the audience are familiar with the term clickbait. And what clickbait means is it's a type of content created with the sole purpose to get a user to navigate to that platform so the creator can then earn money from the ad revenue that that user is exposed to. This leads the creator to come up with whatever crazy content they can imagine to gain the reader's attention very quickly. The next reason that we create fake news is to support partisan agendas. Now, this doesn't just happen to one political party or another. Both politicians and citizens belonging to both political parties have been found guilty of this and have created fake news to either support their own political candidate or to disparage or attack a political opponent. Those are the 2 main reasons we create fake news. The next step in the process is for that fake news to then spread. Like the creation of fake news, there's 2 ways to think about the spread of fake news as well. The first way is a large-scale spreading of fake news. And what I mean by large scale is fake news that spreads through companies and corporations. The first example of this happens through social media. The social media algorithm is designed to keep the audience member engaged and therefore active on the platform for longer amounts of time. Unfortunately, a type of content that is designed to be engaging is fake news. So the social media platform will then be rewarded by having audience members spend longer amounts of time on the platforms by circulating fake news. What may be lesser known, though, is that a process very similar to this happens through mainstream media as well. As audience members, we want to be proven right. So we will actively seek out news sources that will present information in a way that confirms our own pre-existing biases. Ultimately, this leads to mainstream news media sources to present information in a way that will confirm our biases so they can keep having us as audience members. Those are two ways that fake news can spread in a large-scale way, but fake news can also spread on a smaller, more individual way. This happens when users on a social media platform share or send content to each other, and this is widely believed to be the way that Pizzagate became as popular as it did, because users on 4chan would then spread their theories to Reddit and Twitter and Facebook and so on. Those are the ways that fake news can be spread. The next step in the fake news process is for polarization to be impacted. But what is polarization? Why is fake news impacting it? And why is it a bad thing? Political polarization is the process of political beliefs and ideologies becoming more extreme over a period of time. Fake news contributes to this because fake news is designed to be provocative and to make you mad, so when you don't realize that it's false, it can seriously impact your worldviews. Now, it's true that small amounts of polarization can actually be beneficial for democracy, as we need debate and discourse for our government to function. But the US is experiencing some of the highest rates of polarization in US history. And what this causes is that we begin to refuse to interact with each other because we disagree so much. This issue is easy to ignore in our online world today, but it becomes a little harder to ignore when you face it in person. So before I came to school here, I participated in a pre-orientation program where myself and others volunteered at different organizations around the Licking County area. At one such organization, we were having a conversation with a woman about future career paths and what we wanted to do. And some of us expressed an interest in working in the White House. This woman told us, well, you know, that really is a shame since you all are probably all Democrats. She told us that instead of seeking our news from sources like CNN, MSNBC, and BBC, we should instead be getting the real facts from sources such as Fox News, The Daily Caller, and Newsmax. What I noticed is that after learning this woman's political leaning, my friends began to disengage from the conversation and not want to continue the conversation further. Though I was slightly taken aback by her forwardness, I didn't necessarily disagree with her point about seeking out a viewpoint that's different than your own. Talking about polarization can be sobering, but there are solutions to this problem. Today, I want to challenge you all to be more thoughtful about how you consume news. In order to do that, I've created an acronym called the 3 E's of healthy news consumption. The first E stands for examine. What I mean by this is examine your source. Look at the URL. Are there spelling mistakes? Does it come from an unfamiliar domain? Better yet, look up the author. What are their qualifications? Why should they be the one to say what they're trying to say? Or are they even a real person? There are tools online designed to help you with this process, such as a website called All Sides, which is a list of every notable news source on the internet and its ranking on how conservative or liberal that news source tends to lean. The next E stands for exit. And what I mean by exit is exit social media. It's true that younger generations are becoming more reliant on social media for their news. And I'm not suggesting that we ignore what we see on social media. I'm simply proposing that we look it up somewhere else first, see what other sources have to say about it before we take that as fact. The last E stands for expand. And what I mean by expand is expand the amount of sources that you use to consume your news. This may sound counterintuitive, because why would you want to seek out news from a source you know might be biased? But when we do this, we're not only able to understand the issue we're reading about better, but we're also able to better understand why someone might have a different opinion or perspective on an issue that we do. Now, you have learned how the spread and creation of fake news is contributing to political polarization. Political polarization is bad because really high amounts of it can prevent us from interacting with each other and having really important conversations. But by examining our sources, exiting social media, and expanding the amount of sources we use, we can help combat the effects of polarization that fake news is causing. Hopefully, unlike my coworker, you all can prevent from falling for fake news.
I could only wish that all of my public speaking students were as eloquent as Maddie. But just as a review and to make some connections to our larger conversation, her talk mentions many different ways. For example, that the environment that county and city clerks work in, the political environment, can impact the factors they need to take into consideration when trying to exercise or to instill your informal authority. Complex political environments are hard to navigate. Maddie's talk directly addresses how fake news contributes to the political polarization, making these environments even more challenging. The video confirms that a key factor in the spreading of fake news is the idea of the echo chamber, which is that social media space that we often seek to go to because it's comfortable, in which no one disagrees with us. And when no one disagrees with us, that makes us feel that we are even more right when that might not be the case. And in fact, we could be moving further and further from the truth. Maddie's presentation explains how fake news hinders human interaction and conversations between people with differing opinions. We don't like to interact with individuals that we feel we're not going to have anything to agree with, and even in the beginning. And as such, what we seek to do is not even begin those conversations. Maddie's talk articulates that individuals with informal authority can use their influence and expertise to promote certain strategies for better communication within communities and organizations. This could involve educating others, sharing reliable information, and fostering critical thinking. In short, Maddie's presentation provides a detailed explanation of the challenges related to political polarization and fake news, which directly connects to the points that we use to navigate complex political environments and the difficulties currently in finding common ground. Most people know that there are many different viewpoints in any community, but upon a deeper dive, social media algorithms can create the echo chambers that Maddie announced, where people are primarily exposed to information and beliefs that confirm their already existing beliefs. This can lead to that increased polarization and make it so much harder to find common ground. Local issues thus become entangled with national political debates, further fragmenting public opinion. Another factor of the current political environment is that most people will know that community groups fight for the support of their local politicians. Upon deeper dive, what we notice is that there's oftentimes a silent majority whose views may not be as loudly expressed, but are just as equally important. Politicians may overestimate the influence of these vocal minorities and underestimate the views of the broader public. Clerks, through their regular interactions with residents, can have a good sense of what this quiet majority does. Conflict resolutions is also a crucial aspect because county clerks interact with various stakeholders, including officials, county members, and colleagues. Emotions, such as frustration and anger, tend to be the biggest drivers when it comes to conflict. Anger is the cheapest emotion, in my opinion, because it is usually a much more complex emotion underneath that anger is protecting. Think of like a Dairy Cream ice cream cone dipped in a chocolate shell. The chocolate shell is anger. We tend to respond with that because it's so easy to do, but we're usually protecting ourselves of vulnerability, jealousy, lack of understanding, not wanting to appear dumb. Resolving conflicts often necessitates getting past the anger first. Now, I have a video that I found here that helps us to address how to be able to get through and past these anger elements. It's another TED Talk given by Carlene Savage, who is a former hostage negotiator. And she's going to talk about the exact skills that she utilizes to be successful in saving lives that we can also utilize when trying to disarm the conflict that now seems so rampant in today's political sphere. I'll see you after the video.
When people find out I'm a hostage negotiator and I work in conflict resolution, you get a look on your face. And when you do, I know you're thinking of those high-stakes scenarios that you see in the movies. The police barricades, snipers on rooftops, helicopters circling overhead. Is it a bank robbery gone wrong? A hostile takeover at an embassy? But what isn't a joke is what gets left out, what doesn't come to mind when we think of high-stakes crisis and conflict resolution. And that's us. It's the couple that's working through the rough patch in their relationship. It's the exasperation in-laws feel when a new marriage divides families. It's empty nest syndrome, relentless arguments over finances. For me, it's a 14-year-old teenager on the other end of my crisis call. It's all of these things that might be resolved if we had the tools, but are also the kinds of situations that can decimate and destroy and tear families apart. What I want for you is to see that the highest stakes in conflict resolution are happening in the relationships we have every day. If you build those relationships and those skills, you have an opportunity to protect and elevate those relationships. Because when you're in an argument with your spouse, with your teenager, there's no backup SWAT team standing by to help. It's just you. And that means the stakes are as high as they can get. And I understand. More than 25 years ago, my life altered. My husband suffered a brain injury. It was hard to diagnose. He was in 3 car accidents in 9 months. And while he looked normal, brought him home a completely different person. I was 9 months pregnant with baby number 6, and my husband was now trapped in the fog of his injuries, believing I was plotting against him. After more than 10 years of drowning in my own chaos, I knew I had to figure out a solution. So I got educated, and I began working and volunteering in these fields. And then I began to notice a theme of poor decisions that stood in the way of good people getting what they wanted. And then I saw the skills we professionals used that could miraculously move people from rigid to resolved. And that led me to ask the question, how can we use what the experts use in our own lives? And that idea changed my life. After years of study, I came up with 5 universal skills the experts use to resolve conflicts. It's curiosity, their attitude, master listening, connection, and reframing. And while I can't go through all of them here today, what unites these 5 skills is curiosity. But there's lots of curiosities. There's a curiosity that will inspire you to learn something like 18th century art. There's a curiosity that will motivate your ambition to climb that corporate ladder. There's curiosity that helps you avoid risk. But the curiosity and resolution, it's epic. It removes the clutter. It eliminates the ability to make excuses and rationalizations. It uses plain language with simple intent. What do you want, and how would you like to get there? When we're in a fight, we knuckle under, we dig in, and we insist and lock into insisting we are right. So the last thing we want to do is be curious about what the other side sees, but that's the key. And I know curiosity gets a bad rap. It's what killed the cat. It's what gets Curious George into trouble, but not here. Here, if you want to elevate your relationship, get curious. And if you want to know how, there's only 2 areas of focus: you and them. So I'd like to focus on you for a minute, and I want to ask you 3 questions that are going to reveal your own little secret about how curious you are in conflict. So I want you to think of a terrible fight. Can you picture it? Question number 1, did you allow them to have their own story independent of yours? Question 2, were you willing to hear their story without the emotional or verbal backlash that we are so good at? And number 3, did you allow their story to become part of the solution? That's it. Those are the 3 questions. You guys, in life-critical situations, high stakes, these are the things we look for. We invite, we ask about. We want to know and learn what is happening on the other side. Shouldn't we want those for our relationships? Focus area number 2 is them. But how can you be curious when it seems like they're the ones causing all the problems? Well, if you want a curiosity breakthrough that will blow your mind, so simple. Go home, find somebody to talk to. Ask them questions for 15 minutes, just questions. But there's a caveat. No prompts from you. That means no facial expressions showing your opinion. No saying, I get it, I can relate, I understand, and then you begin story swapping or sharing your words of wisdom over your experiences. No noises that come from you. When you do those things, they will almost always change their story. So just ask questions. It is the stronger way of talking to somebody. So let me see if I can bring this into a package for you. Let's say your spouse is really angry and you're the target. Well, of course you're the target. Let them have their story. Hear it without backlash, and then take a breath. In simple language, and using their story as part of the solution. Ask a question like, this is just an example. So you said that I don't care about our kids. When you said that, what did you see in me that made you feel that way? Or one of my favorites is, what would it take to make things right? Finally, ask questions before people feel hopeless. Before kids are thrown into a divorce, your friends choose sides because you may not be the one they pick. Before the in-laws walk out and miss holidays and recitals. Now, I'm going to just insert, I don't know where my marriage is going. We've been married for more than 3 decades now. But what I can tell you is this literally saved it. I now know this man is a divine, exquisite human being that deserves the very best the world has to offer. And I didn't get there on my own account. I got there through curiosity. So be intentional about learning about where the other side is coming from. And instead of digging into your own position and doubling down on that, do the opposite. Ask them about their position. Use that as the start of your curiosity in conflict.
I think we can say that easily the main theme of Carlene's talk is this notion of curiosity. And so connecting conflict resolution to the aspects of hostage negotiation, there's some important themes for us to pull out. And one is active listening. Carlene highlights how mastering listening can be one of the key skills for conflict resolution, but listening can be hard. Hearing is easy. We hear all of the time. But listening requires psychological investment. We use up our resources. At the end of the day, if all you've done is interacted with other individuals and you're so tired, you're not building rocks with other rocks, but you're still utilizing your concentration to be in the moment with other individuals. It takes discipline and work. Carlene emphasizes also the importance of asking open-ended questions to understand other people's feelings and perspectives. If you look at the theory of her talk, it's about otherness. It's a focus on the other. She didn't articulate that you need to get your point across first. She didn't say that you need to speak louder, but in essence, you need to take on the role of a scientist, of a young child walking into nature for the first time, being curious and finding out as much about what is going on around you rather than what's going on within you. Stay focused on that issue. While not perhaps directly, explicitly stated, Kathleen's words focus on the issue of seeking to understand the other person's viewpoint and working towards a resolution based on that understanding. She also emphasizes the importance of curiosity, as we said a little bit earlier. She suggests and guides us to asking open-ended questions to understand the other person's feelings and perspectives, such as, what did you see in me that made you feel that way? What would it take to make things right? And at the end, she really argues for us to try to focus on this notion of common ground for any kind of conflict resolution. So when seeking to become a conflict resolutionist, you want to model those elements of active listening, of who can paraphrase what the speaker said to you to confirm your understanding. There's no element more powerful for a relationship than another individual who feels that they want to understand you. And paraphrasing is a fundamental tool to be able to do that. To be able to paraphrase, what we do is we listen to what another individual has said to us. And we almost create a little movie in our mind to empathically put ourselves into the words that they're sharing. And then when they're done speaking, we start with, so what I'm hearing you say is this. And you don't say word for word, you don't parrot, but instead you interpret what you feel that you've heard them say, but at the same time, what might be the emotions behind those words. So what I'm hearing is that you're concerned about this. And when you're done with your interpretation, Ask for permission, as in, am I right? Am I on the right track? Because when we paraphrase, we're intentionally removing ourselves from being on a position higher than another individual, but almost in the position of novice or of apprentice, trying to understand and to learn. We need to show empathy by acknowledging the speaker's feelings. It sometimes makes me chuckle when I read research related to conflict resolution and the acknowledgement of other people's emotions. Because when we had our first children, we have a 14 and a 12-year-old now, but when they were toddlers, all of the books told us we read The Happiest Toddler on the Block. They would tell us things like, when your child is upset, don't try to reason with them. Because when we as human beings become upset, our ability to reason drops precipitously, on average about 20 IQ points. And I need those IQ points, especially when I'm arguing. And so what they tell us in those toddler books is to acknowledge the other person's feelings with statements such as, you're upset, you are angry. And when you do that, you get to see the other individual to actually kind of lose gas. Now, I'm not saying that you talk like a toddler to any of the individuals that you work with. You can try that out and see how it goes. But by showing that empathy for the speaker's feelings, I understand that this situation is very frustrating for you. Stay focused on the issue, not the person. And I think that this is a common theme we've seen through many of our slides, that we will become divided if we feel that you are attacking me as an individual and not focused on the common ground of how can we find a way forward for a resolution that works for all parties involved. Encourage parties to share their underlying interests by asking those open-ended questions such as, what's the most important thing for you in this situation? Or perhaps, what does success look like if this resolution is introduced? Another key piece of advice is that when you are interacting with someone who may be elevated emotionally, avoid questions that begin with why. When we ask people things such as why, for example, why did you choose your spouse? Why did you choose your occupation? Why did you choose that outfit? All of those questions with the word why put the other individual into a defensive frame of mind. But if we change the wording and just input it as storytelling, tell me about the time you met your spouse. Tell me about the path that brought you to this occupation. Tell me about what you're working to accomplish with this outfit today. By reframing it into an almost tell me a story framework, that tells the other individual, I'm not here to question your motives. I want to understand. Find those common areas of interest that both parties can agree on. This will help shift focus from positions to shared interests. Now, the last element of the complexities of political governments that we're going to talk about is cultural competence. Cultural competence means educating ourselves about the cultural, historical, and social context of the communities that we serve, so that we can better be able to address their unique needs as well as their challenges. For example, St. Cloud, Minnesota has had a significant Somali population today, but it didn't just happen. In fact, if we take a look about 30 years ago, you're going to see a significant increase. So a city or county clerk could potentially encounter a significant population change in their own backyard. Starting in the 1980s, when the population of Somali residents in St. Cloud was around 0, to a couple generations later, generation being 20 years, we're now talking over 14,000 individuals in our school systems, being the taxpayers, and being those citizens that we connect with, that are valued parts of our new life. But sociologically, this much of a shift is huge in a short period of time. And it can cause misunderstandings and frustrations along many different co-cultural lines. City or county clerks in cities like St. Cloud might encounter the following points of difference. For example, Somali cultures place a strong focus on family and clan relationships. Understanding these systems can help clerks go a long way to build trust as well as support. The Somali community has faced significant anti-immigration sentiment. For example, in 2017, a city council member proposed a temporary halt for Somali residents, affecting their sense of safety as well as belonging. Clerks could advocate for policies and practices that support refugee resettlement as well as reintegration. And so working towards a level of stronger cultural understanding and competence and knowing the individuals that you serve can really go a long way in you helping to find bridges for the complex or differing viewpoints or populations within the community of that you find yourself. All right, that takes us to the end of this portion. I'll see you next time.